How you doing, real progressives? This is Jackie Lukeman, and had a day to breathe, had some time to contemplate some things. I've intentionally not commented too much on the announcement by Senator Sanders to endorse Secretary Clinton. But what I have done is watched a lot of Sanders supporters, too many of us, almost losing our minds, talking about how Sanders is a traitor, he's a liar, calling him all kinds of names, and people are crying, and they're just practically jumping off buildings. My life is over. And I have to ask myself, for the past 15 months, we've been talking about hashtag we are the revolution. Really? Are we the revolution? Because let me tell you something. This is not what revolutionaries do. This is not how revolutionaries behave. You want to know why? Revolutionaries don't unite around a leader, really. They unite around issues to fight for or against. Yes, an individual can come along and awaken the masses to problems that a lot of people may not have known about, but the revolution is not about that person. Revolution, all successful revolutions are about the issues that people become aware of and are angry about and want to change, not the person who told them that there was a problem. So if you're committed to fighting against injustice, or if you're committed to fighting for equality, then your commitment should not change, regardless of who the leader of the movement is or what he or she does or doesn't do. Because, see, real revolutionaries cause those in power to fear the masses within the revolution. If the leader is the strength of the revolution, then those in power know that all they have to do is take the leader out. And then I don't mean that in some type of nefarious way, but it's not like it hasn't happened. I'm sitting here talking to you as a beneficiary of the civil rights movement. And what did those in power do to the leaders of our movement? They took them out. And what happened to all of that great, wonderful momentum from the civil rights movement that Martin Luther King Jr. fomented? It fizzled out. Because when he was assassinated, he was working for addressing income inequality for poor white and black Americans. And he was also working toward addressing racial inequality for black Americans especially, and fighting against the Vietnam War. But because he was the focal point of that movement, he was the spotlight. He was the one who was the quote unquote leader, who was standing at center stage, giving everyone directions, and no one made a move until he said so. When he was taken out, the movement stalled. This is why Black Lives Matter has no central leadership today. I know some people are very critical of Black Lives Matter, and one of the criticisms is they don't have a central organization or central leadership. There's a reason for that. They learned from the mistakes of the civil rights movement. We never like to admit that there were mistakes made with the civil rights movement. Yes, it accomplished some amazing things, but it didn't go far enough. That's obvious because we're still having these problems. And one of the criticisms, one of the problems with the civil rights movement was this idea of focusing and relying on centralized leadership. A member of the civil rights movement, Ella Baker, I know you don't know who she is because all the focus was on Martin Luther King Jr., but Ella Baker was a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and she favored a more democratic kind of organizing where the concept was not just a spotlight on one person to be the spokesperson and to be the guiding force for the organization, but the focus was on having 10,000 candles lighting up the country, all over the place at the same time, doing the same work, maybe in different ways, maybe in different areas, but having the same focus, fighting for the same issues. This is the model that Black Lives Matter has adopted for themselves. And this is why you see protests happening across the country at different times, in different places, involving different people, and no one has issued a call from quote unquote Black Lives Matter organization to do this, because Black Lives Matter exists around fighting injustice in a particular area. They do not exist at the whim of one particular person. They don't wait for direction from one particular person. As a matter of fact, Patrisse Cullors, one of the founders of the organization, she's very careful to say that she is not a leader, she's one of the founders, says the consequence of focusing on a leader is that you develop a necessity for that leader to be the one who's the spokesperson and the organizer, who tells the masses where to go, rather than the masses understanding that we can catalyze a movement in our own communities. So, real progressives, what does that mean for us? We need to be like Ella Baker's model of the civil rights movement. We need to be like Ella Baker's model of organizing to fight for social change. I love Bernie Sanders. I have a great deal of respect for Bernie Sanders, but I have been fighting this fight before Bernie Sanders ever decided to run for president. He has awakened a knowledge in many of you to things that you knew nothing about. And that's great. That's amazing. That's fabulous. But your passion for this work, for continuing this work, for continuing to fight for social and racial and income justice and equality in this country and environmental justice for everyone, should not hinge upon what Bernie Sanders does or does not do. Would I have loved for him to have won the presidency? Absolutely. Yes. And because truth is stranger than fiction, anything can still happen. I'm not going to write it off that it can't ever happen, but I'm not going to hinge what I continue to do in this fight, or how passionate I am, or what my next steps are on what Bernie Sanders does. I have learned from my own experience in the fight for that my own people have, that we've had to have all these years, that we can't do that. Because sometimes things happen to our leaders that we have no control over. And sometimes our leaders make decisions that we don't necessarily like, that we can't in good conscience follow. And sometimes our leaders don't move fast enough for us. And sometimes our leaders aren't focused on things that we want to be focused on, that we think are important to us. So we need to be, as real progressives, like the Ella Bakers of the civil rights movement. We need to be like the Black Lives Matter of the progressive political movement. This isn't a sprint, y'all. We're not going to get this done in 4 years and 8 years. Hell, we might not even get it done in 16 or 20. This is a marathon, though. So that's okay. We have all the ammunition we need right now with our knowledge, our passion, and whomever will work on our behalf in the halls of power and outside of the halls of power, because we need insiders and outsiders too. But what we don't need right now or ever is for real progressives to go crying back into the shadows because you don't have a chosen leader that you latched on to for whatever reason. You latch on to the issues. You latch on to fighting for what is right and what is good for our future. Leader be damned. So I am telling you today, real progressives, as a black woman in America who's been fighting for my people since I knew there was a reason to fight for my people, grow up, man. Grow up. Dry your tears, pull your pants up, grow up, stand up, fight for your lives and your futures. We don't need this revolution to have a spotlight leader, because we can burn this system down as 10,000 candles. I've got my candle. What about you? Hang in there, real progressives. Seriously, hang in there for the long haul. Thanks for listening.